Hello, it's January 11th. My name might be Caleb Reese, and I live in Minneapolis. Yes, that Minneapolis. If you've been watching the news, you know we're at the center of another mass conflict and unrest, and as a resident of Minneapolis, I am here to say a woman died this week. No politics, no nonsense, no agendas yet. Someone in my community 2 miles from where I'm recording this right now was killed by a federal agency that supposedly has no jurisdiction over American citizens, is trained specifically not to stand in front of vehicles, and is also by statute not permitted to shoot a moving vehicle for the extreme danger that a dead driver with their foot on the gas pedal can cause. Whatever you think was the justification or whatever angle you saw to try and frame your bias, these are things that happened. This affects my community, my friends, my neighbors. This isn't a national news talking point or an article in the newspaper for us. This is my everyday, whether I leave the apartment or friends visit for comfort and togetherness. ICE running around our city has us all scared and losing a lot of sleep. This has been the entirety of my second week of 2026, and I can't shut it out and just go about my day. This is very real. So now on to politics. From my perspective, there are two parties. One is an internal conflict that mostly appeals to rich businesses and doesn't really support the common person, but is trying, albeit unsuccessfully, to fund education, scientific research, and especially healthcare, so that all our lives are better. They have no power currently. They don't control the House, the Senate, or the presidency. They've had no power since 2025. All decisions in the government have been at the hands of the Republican Party, who currently worship one deranged old man who is dismantling education because they don't like what's being taught, canceling scientific studies because they think it's a waste of money, and trying really hard to make sure healthcare only gets more expensive. I guess so people die? One party has a mass of conflicting ideas fighting each other to pass legislation and reach towards a compromising goal. The other votes in a monolith, pledges absolute fealty towards their leader, and will be crushed if they do not do so. This party is a cult. And before you say something about Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi or any other old person you people are weirdly obsessed with, I don't care what people who currently hold no power and make no decisions did. Well, you were weirdly silent when Biden... No, shut up. I'm not commenting on a weird old man who is retired somewhere. I am mad about Republicans currently making our lives much worse. I don't care what a party that has no controlling power at all did, and you really shouldn't care either. And to clarify, by Republicans, I'm talking about a small group of lawmakers that actively pass legislation and directly participate in the system as an elected member. If you are not a public servant in either federal, state, or local government, I'm not criticizing you. In fact, if you don't own any piece of MAGA memorabilia, then congratulations, you think of politics as more than pretending it's a sports team. I am especially not talking about you. So now that that's all out of the way, let's wind back the clock. In 2020, a man used a counterfeit $20 bill at a convenience store. He was killed by police for it. I was living in the Whittier neighborhood at the time, so that also happened about 1.5 miles from my home. While biking home from a first date, I accidentally stumbled onto the very first protest outside the 3rd precinct. I was met with protesters shouting in the streets and police standing upon the precinct like gargoyles in full armor. While I was there, I tried to see things from both sides and remain impartial because I used to stay out of politics. But then a protester threw a water bottle at the police on the rooftop, and in response they fired into the crowd at everyone. Rubber bullets were flying all around me. It was very traumatic. And in that moment, I experienced firsthand police escalating a conflict, stoking the flames, and making people's lives actively worse just to show off how much power they had. I cannot stress enough that they were in full armor. A water bottle or even a rock would have not affected them in any way. Now you can say protests don't do anything. They're just a bunch of paid actors. It's a waste of time. The administration in power really loves delegitimizing protests. They say it won't change anybody's mind, but here's the thing. That 3rd precinct changed my mind. In that moment, I was, as they put it, radicalized. But the left didn't radicalize me. They did. I attended multiple demonstrations after that. I saw again and again in Minneapolis the police abusing their power, escalating conflict instead of quieting it, and sowing distrust and fear in the community, and making everybody's lives more dangerous. They clearly didn't prevent anything either, as looting still happened, buildings still burned to the ground, chaos still ensued. And the days after? Well, there were no police helping with cleanup, or police community outreach, or food support groups, or any of the like. The government failed us in 2020, and the community stepped in to fix it instead. The news, of course, did not cover whatsoever the community-led cleanup efforts, the donation rallies, free food and drinks, the medical staff donating their time and supplies, but I know about these things because I didn't read about George Floyd and the 2020 uprising in a news article or a TV report. I was there, and it changed me. It changed the city, too. In November of 2021, nearly 40% of the city voted to abolish the police. We didn't succeed, but like that's a crazy high number. Remember, this is an extremely blue city, so it's not like this was a party lines issue. And in a lot of areas, community-led neighborhood watch groups, private security companies, and non-police government agents have taken a lot of the work off the police hands. The rail station, which was full of rule-breaking and dangerous situations even in 2023, decriminalized fares and took the police away from rail patrols in favor of transit agents. And the rail is much safer than it was before. I say as somebody who rides it like weekly. Oftentimes at night, I live directly above the rail station. We're friends. Policing in Minneapolis and the country as a whole is still an ongoing issue. I will not discount that, but in 2021 it felt like all of our efforts were for nothing. Now in 2026, I can safely say the protests changed public opinion. Change is slow, it's still being made, but when we come together, it works. Which leads me into my next point. The fear of ICE has been crushing me all week, and I've been afraid to leave my home and drive in that neighborhood. I feel sick, I wanted to hide away and sleep and ignore the whole world. I felt isolated, scared, and essentially alone. I was genuinely afraid that if I went out and protested, I could be injured or arrested or killed. I nearly didn't go, and I'm so glad I didn't let that fear take me over, because what I found at the protest was community. Even from the get-go, the buses headed there for the protests were all ride-free. Metro Transit was encouraging us to attend by eliminating the cost of ridership, and our bus was packed. When we got the people out, the people were cheering, drivers were honking their horns in support, bystanders were waving. I cannot stress enough that the neighborhood wanted us there. ICE claims to be serving Americans, but these Americans do not want ICE here. They claim to be making us safer, but they are just harming us. They're not welcome. Tens of thousands of the same Minneapolis community that I fell in love with in 2020 were there together, offering warmth, free food and drinks, supporting one another, and speaking as a singular voice in protest of a government that is once again failing us. People cheered from their houses, cars honked in support, and we marched together with a band of artists, activists, and really good Samaritans through frigidly cold temperatures. Like, it was like 20 degrees. The wind was really strong, and all the roads and sidewalks were covered in ice. That is the slippery water kind. I cannot overstate how treacherous and freezing it was to be outside, but we all still went anyway. It was such a welcoming protest and creative and cathartic place, and the strongest reminder that we are not alone in this moment. And for me, I know that this was not a waste of time. That won't change anyone's mind, because protests changed my mind. They got me involved. They also reminded me that it's not all on me, and everyone can do their part in different and effective ways. My mother does not live here, but she drove through her town looking to join in protests for the first time in her life yesterday and was devastated when she couldn't find one. People see what's going on, and the pain it's causing communities is real. We know this. People in Powderhorn know this, and Renee Good's family knows it so much more than all of us. I really can't stress to begin to imagine the horrible grief that Renee's wife, her children, and whole family must be going through. So we all have to do this for them and for whoever might be next until it doesn't happen anymore. Because this collective power we share works. It may feel completely hopeless, but that's by design. They want you to believe you're alone because you're easier to control that way. So don't let the current administration, the next administration, or anyone else tell you that protests don't work, that we're all a bunch of paid actors. I am just here to say this works, and we're going to keep doing it, and something good will show for it. I'm not being paid by the Democrats. I'm actually a progressive. I make trouble for the Democrats too, because they also make problems, but again, they're not in power, so let's fight the power that's actively doing harm and worry about the Democrats when and if they take control again, okay? Stay strong. It's only the second week of 2026, and we have a long year to go. Sam, you beat me to the upload, so I will see you in 5 days.